Thank you all so much for coming. It's great to have you here. Thank you for joining us remotely on Zoom. It's also great to have you here. I will start by introducing myself. My name is Rachel. I am the head of the Writers Guild here at Wix, and I am also the head of our product localization team. For those of you who are not familiar with our Writers Guild, the Writers Guild is basically the organization that connects all writers from all different disciplines across Wix so that we can be aligned with methodology and ensure that we are following the same standards as writers. I'm going to start off with a quick recap because we are here today in the 4th meetup of our product lifecycle meetup series. So let's go through what does that mean? What's the product lifecycle and where we are now? So in general, when we talk about the product lifecycle, we're typically talking about kind of the steps that we take more or less on a high level to release a product from the beginning, from the idea of a product to when it actually rolls out to our users. And we call it a life cycle because it's constantly obviously being optimized and we're constantly working on iterations. So the beginning of the product life cycle for us is typically here when we do a kickoff in general. Obviously there's research and thought that go into why we're doing this feature and how we're going to do this feature and whether we're even going to do this feature. But once we've decided or the product manager has decided on going forward with a feature or a new product, there's a kickoff. The product team meets and talks about why they're doing it, what the KPIs are, and what the process is and what the scope is moving forward. So in our first meetup, we actually talked about, for the UX writers at Wix, what we do first. And this is research. Okay, we know there's going to be a feature. We know there's going to be some kind of a product release. What does that mean? What kind of terminology are we looking at? Do we have tickets about this? We do internal research on, what have we been calling this internally, or why are we doing this internally? What language is being used internally, and also user research on, competitor research. What are our users calling this? What are competitors calling this? How are they dealing with this kind of feature? We talked all about that. And after we figure out kind of the lay of the land, we then sit down and get to work. We work on writing and we work on editing, making sure we're polishing our text. And this we dealt with in our second meetup. We talked a little bit about our methodologies and the way that we refine our work. And then in the third part of the way that we relate to the product lifecycle at Wix, we then have to align with our stakeholders and get feedback from the people that we're working with. So we talked about the way that we collaborate and how we are better teammates and how we can work better together within our product teams. And once we've aligned on everything and we've kind of decided, we've done the writing, we've aligned with stakeholders, we've gotten their feedback, we've polished the text, then it's time for us to send it to localization. And that's where we are today. We'll talk more about it. I don't want to give spoilers. All of these you can find, and you will be able to find this one as well on our YouTube channel. You will see this in the deck afterwards. We'll share it with all of you guys. That's a link. You can click it and visit it, but if you're not sure how to click or visit or any of those things, you can just type into Google Wix Writers YouTube channel. Wix UX Writers YouTube channel, and you'll find all of our previous meetups there. So go for it. This is my plug to you guys. But wait, there's more, because we're going to have the final meetup, which is about actually how we handle the rollout and optimization of these features next quarter. So stay tuned. Don't worry. If you don't see it on LinkedIn, you'll probably see it on Facebook or Threads, wherever you are. So I'm just going to quickly start by talking about localization on a high level. What is localization? So in general, when we talk about localization, at least here at Wix, we're talking about adapting any product to a specific country or region, which means that localization is not just about translating the words. It's really about understanding the country's culture and also how it affects our users. And I think it's important to just show you some examples that can illustrate that idea. So first, I'm sure all of you guys have seen the keyboard, because otherwise you wouldn't have known where we're doing this meetup. But there's a fun fact that each country has its own version of this keyboard. Here you can see two examples, our example in the United States and our example in France. And in general, you can even just focus on a specific area. So I'm going to focus you guys on this area over here. And as you can see, the order of the letters is different between the two versions. And that's because in each country, there are certain letters that usually go together in a word. And they are placed next to each other. So you can see that the placement of the functional buttons is different. And that's because each country has a different frequency use for these buttons. It's a great example of how something so common in our lives can be localized to the needs of different countries. Here's a completely different example. We are looking at two movie posters for the movie American Psycho. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's a very good movie and also terrifying. On the left, you can see the US version of this poster, and on the right, you can see the Japanese version. It's very clear that these look very different. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason that the different posters look different. On the US version, we can see that the color palette is different. It's very dark. And we have the actor, Christian Bale, who is extremely prominent inside the frame. US audience, they know Christian Bale. It's important for them to know the actor. It's important for him to be very close up and to be able to recognize his face. And in general, the entire image is extremely dramatic. In the Japanese version, you can see that the color palette is light, and in general, the design is way more minimalistic. Another interesting element is that there's this text over here in the Japanese version. And this text, it's there for a reason. Hold on, let me move to the next. What does it say? It says, Patrick Bateman, 27. Wall Street's elite trading company man. His hobbies are exercising and murder. Why is it there? It's like a bite-sized description of the film and who this character is in the film. And why is that important? Because in Japan, one, it's very expensive to go to the movies, and so Japanese people feel that they really need to know what they're getting themselves into and understand that they're making a good decision and that it's value for money and that it is worth spending their money on this. Way more expensive, at least in the States. But also, they need to feel secure with their decision making. So they need more information ahead of time, and they're less impulsive and like connected to their impulse, like in the American poster. Here's another example, and this is mainly about how, as a business, you might penetrate different markets as well. So here we have Uber. It's a transportation company, but a lot of people think of it as just like a car company. But actually, you can see that that's not the case, because what Uber is trying to do is help get people from place to place. In the US, yeah, it's cars. But in India, you can see that they understood that it's important that they penetrate the transportation industry with the rickshaw. And in Turkey and Croatia, where you have way more waterways, they actually have you Ubering boats. Also in London, by the way. So you can see how Uber took a really smart approach, the way that they are localizing. So localization is everywhere. So now I'm going to talk really quickly about Wix and product localization at Wix. And I'm saying product localization because there's all different kinds of localization we're doing. A lot of the examples that I showed you before are actually like kind of more marketing localization. And we're focusing on product because this is the product lifecycle series. And we are UX writers. So why are we talking about product localization first? Like, why do we care? Why does Wix care? So first I'm going to talk a little bit about numbers. 55% of our registered users, people that come to Wix, log in, use Wix, build websites, they're English speakers. But actually these 55, if we break it down, are divided between 5 English-speaking countries. We have USA, we have UK, we have Australia, Canada, and South Africa. And actually, I'm sure we have English speakers in other countries, but this is like the general main concentration. But that means that localization is actually not just about language. And it's another way for me to emphasize this point because, as we all know, or many of us know, Americans and British people have very different ways of writing dates and times. You can see it right here. It's completely different. I remember when I moved to Israel and I was like, what is this 19 thing? What is that? Now I love it. More numbers is what is that other side of the circle? It's actually 45% of our registered users are non-English speakers. That's a whole lot of users. For us, it's really important to be thinking of them. And what does that mean exactly? So today, we are localizing our product into 36 languages. I'll break that down in a second. And we cover, in terms of the languages that people speak in the world, 55% of the languages that people are speaking in the world. So when we're looking at the languages, when I say 36, what I mean is we cover 21 languages that users can actually use their account in. They can come to Wix, they can see the interface in that language. And an additional 15 languages where we support them building a website in that language and ensuring that all areas of their website can be localized to those languages. Actually, right now it's 13, but in a month and a half it'll be 15. So there you go. So our mission, our overall North Star goal, and I hope that we make it there sometimes, it's there for us to strive to get to that point, is for every person in the world whose language we support to feel as if Wix was built and aimed for their culture and their country. What happens if our product is not localized? Like, why? Why is it important? If our product is not localized, tons of users are excluded from Wix, right? You saw that pie chart. If we weren't localizing it, about 45% of our users would not be able to succeed. Our product vision would become very narrow. What does that mean? It means that when you're not thinking of the wide audience, you're really thinking of a very small slice, and usually you're not thinking about that small slice very well. We cannot penetrate new global markets, very similar. It means we're not going to be able to grow as a company, get more users. And Wix is never going to become an internationally known brand and a product that people feel helps them in different places around the world. But what if our product is localized and not very well? Why does that matter? If we don't do a good job, it means that users are not going to be able to do what they want to do with Wix. They're going to get confused, they're not going to understand, they will lose their way. In addition, they will complain and they'll lose trust in Wix, and they'll lose trust in our brand. Our product will look unprofessional and unpolished, and at the end of the day, our brand will be jeopardized. So, bottom line is our job is trying to get users to think these things. This is our goal. Wow, these product flows are so intuitive. I have no problem finding this feature or the product that I need. This UI looks great. I'm very proud of my Wix site. Visitors from my country will like it too. How do we make that happen? So, how do we get our product flows to be intuitive? We want to make our microcopy in those flows for that language and that market very precise so that we are guiding our user. And we want to make sure that there are market-specific flows when necessary, okay? People are going to talk more about this stuff later, so I'm not going into detail. I'm giving you a basic introduction. If you have questions, pocket those. We will get to it. I have no problem finding the feature or product that I need. How do we do that, mainly? We need to work on consistent naming and terminology. You see something in one place, it's marketed to you in another place. We want to make sure you've seen it, you're looking for it. It's called the same thing all over the product. This UI looks great. We want to make sure that there's no broken layouts, there's no inaccessible text, the proper formatting and fonts exist for the different regions. And there's obviously no English. And I'm very proud of my Wix site. So we want to make sure that we're supporting sites that can be built in great professional localized text, proper fonts, no broken layouts, all that good stuff. Same for our users when they're building their Wix sites. So what does that look like? I'm going to give you more examples because we love examples. So first here, these are some examples from Wix and different product screens that we've handled. This is part of the onboarding flow. When you're signing up to Wix, one of the first things that we do is we want to ask questions about what you're actually trying to do at Wix so that we can guide you in what we think is the right direction or the right way to build your website so that you can reach success. You can do what you're trying to do. So when we first started our onboarding, we were working in English, and in the US, we asked this question, what best describes your workplace for people that are professionally building sites or working in a company, right? We want to know, are they a freelancer? Are they an agency? Are they a huge company, an enterprise? Are they a small business, a student? Like, what's their workplace? When we were localizing it to French, actually, we were like, we can't say that. When we're thinking about the word workplace in French, it actually is focusing on like the physical location. It's kind of like saying, hey, tell me what your office looks like describe your office to me. So we really needed to think differently about it. And instead, we wrote what best describes your professional activity. Here's another really good example from the onboarding funnel, the questions that we ask users in the beginning. So this is the beginning. This is like when we first start and we say, hey, welcome to Wix. You want to start building a website? In English, we say, let's bring your ideas to life. And below that, we have a subtitle that says, answer some questions to get the best tools for what you're creating. Now, when we localized it initially in German, actually we saw that it was not performing well. Not only were Germans not answering questions, but then they were just kind of like leaving and not continuing. So we needed to actually go back and understand why. You may or may not know this, but Germans do not like to answer personal questions, apparently. So how do you make a German person go through the funnel without giving this feeling of being interrogated? And we really needed to fine-tune this, and this is the result. This screen shows this screen basically says, hey, find the right tools for your website in a few steps. And it's not really about asking questions. It's actually more about breaking it down into like bite-sized steps so that they're not feeling like they're being interrogated, but rather like, let's do this together in little steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3. And this way, the German user also understands what they should be expecting. It's not just what questions are they going to ask me. It's actually like, you know, now you know we're going to break this down into little bite-sized steps. So this is also like a similar explanation where we have for the American audience in English, we have you created a website before, where we're asking another question, and here we're saying we're not asking a question, have you created a website before, but rather we're saying, hey, describe your website building experience. And it's a little bit more collaborative sounding. And it's a little bit more task-oriented. And the statement below here, which doesn't exist in this screen, but we added another subtitle here, says, this will help us recommend the best starting point for building your site. So not only did we rephrase actually the question into not a question, but like more of a task, and we additionally added another clarification as to how we will be using this information in order to further them down the funnel so they understand what to expect. Another example of the way that we localize and what we are going for and what we are shooting for is really this, is making sure also that everything looks polished and fine. So when we are getting to a place where we see that there is super, super long text, then we are like revisiting and ensuring that this can be expanded in order to accommodate really long text or longer text. We know that there are other languages that we need to add a lot more characters just by default to understand what the average length is. Okay. So that's what we're trying to do. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do it, or how we try to do it. So what does getting to our North Star require from us? It requires involving localization in the product lifecycle. Product teams actually need localization guidance. You know, a lot of the time they think that they know everything that needs to be done and everything that our users need, but a lot of the times they don't really know our markets very well. And that's our job, to help guide them. Context for writers, when we send things to localization, our writers need to understand, wait a second, what are we going for? What is the intent of this messaging? How can I think about that a little bit better? And ensure that I am taking that messaging and localizing it for the needs of people who are speaking my language. New terminology, it should be identified as early as possible so that we can give time to our writers to understand how they can maintain consistency and how they can actually localize it properly. Translation freedom, so really like trusting our localization writers to do what's best for our users in that locale. And a lot of review and QA, like just checking things, making sure we didn't miss anything. Okay, I need to move quickly, so I'm just going to say not all markets are created equal. Why am I saying that? We can't give everything the same attention with the resources that we have. These are things that we need to balance. We need to balance, as a business, the localization impact or potential impact. So when I showed you this earlier, this funnel, and US and Germany, this is where we said, wow, the numbers are not good in Germany. Let's think about what the numbers are in Germany everywhere else and how our users are using Wix everywhere else. If we make these tweaks, what's the impact that that can have? Because it's a lot of work to do a unique funnel for a specific market. And actually, at the end of the day, we looked and we were like, it's worth it. Like, these users need a specific funnel. And the numbers were great afterwards, by the way. So we need to think about that. We need to think, what's the impact if we make these changes? We need to understand. We need to understand return on investment. What is this going to cost us? Operationally, time-wise, all that. We need to understand how much we're going to make back. We need to also understand, what are our limits with resources? Can we use all of resources in the world? Or actually, like, what is our time limit? What is our people limit? All these things. And this is how we make decisions on where we're going to focus our efforts. This is with everything at Wix. Yeah, I know this is like very basic, but this is with everything, and also with localization. So who makes it happen? We have 22 in-house localization writers, plus like 50 plus freelancers that we work with who are great people. We rely on them. We also have 12 in-house localization managers. I'll talk a little bit more about what they do. These guys are, wait, I'll stop for a second. This Venn diagram, why is it here? Basically, this is our localization team. We have writers that also handle localization management, meaning they are also an interface with the product team. But we also have people who are just doing it like full-time localization management. That means they're the interface with the product team. That's what it means when we say localization managers. These are the guys who facilitate localization for our 50 plus product teams. And they are in touch with the developers, designers, writers, PM, ops, whatever they need to be in touch with, also data for these teams. And this is basically the flow. Like, they need to be in constant communication with the product teams, and then in touch with our writers, and then things need to flow kind of back and forth. It's more than a workflow at the end of the day. I know that I can show you this really cool diagram, but it's also it's more about like how we communicate with one another. It's super important. I'll leave it at that. Other people are going to talk about this later. And it's also, and I think this is the hardest part, and I would say we are still working on this, at doing a better job at this, but it's also about aligning across teams. How is the marketing localization team doing marketing? Where are they putting their focus? Why are they putting their focus there? How is our knowledge base doing localization? Are we using terminology, the right terminology across all of our different areas? Our chatbot, which helps with customer care communications, are they using the same terminology that we are? How are they doing localization? What languages are they focusing on? What locales are they focusing on? So we're working on that. I think we need to do a better job at that, but I think it's also super, super important. And that's it for now.